All right. Before we dive into class this week, talk to me about the networking event. How did that go? Networking events. What's your feedback? What did you learn? Who did you connect with? Do you think it was worth taking 2 nights of class off? Do you wish we do them in the future? Do you wish we never do them again? How are you guys feeling about that?
I think they were super helpful. I met somebody who gave me a lot of good information about a for-profit business that I was talking to about at the one at Lemoyne, and he gave me a lot of great resources. So I think that's really helpful, especially when you networking across with people. I think that could be more fruitful than trying to network up to somebody that might be a little hard to get to or just might not have time. But people who might be a little bit ahead of you or exactly where you at, it seemed, I feel like I made some good connections.
Good. Couple LinkedIn connections. That's good. What else? Did you feel prepared for it? Was there anything that you wish you knew or you knew now that you wish you knew at the beginning? Jen said, it's hard to talk to people about coding when we don't know enough about it to hold a conversation. I think you're completely wrong there. You're 2/3 of the way into the program. You can talk about your React journey. You can talk about using APIs. You can talk about building websites. You can talk about thinking through all of your project requirements. You can talk about what it's been like to learn remotely versus in person. You can talk about your learning style and what you've learned, what works and what doesn't work. And more importantly, it's not always about you, right? And that's my major networking tip is treat it like dating. And if that person talks more than you are talking, chances are they think that connection went well. So don't be afraid to ask them questions of, well, what's your background? How did you get in this career? That kind of stuff as well. So it is one of those things that you never really feel confident about talking about it until you do start talking about it. And then all of a sudden you realize you do know what you are talking about. So don't be afraid to just get out there, put yourself out there and go from there. Anything else about the networking events? Any questions that popped up? Anything like that? Okay. On Thursday, we will be having our next capstone check-in. I will post a message tomorrow about what the requirements are, but basically we want to see that you've got your React app created. We want to see that you've got a router set up with at least 2 routes, and we want to see a couple components created. Your entire project does not need to be moved over. You do not need to be making API calls, although bonus points if you are. You do not need to have all of the functionality down, but we want to see you have a jump start on React. We want to see that you're not afraid to dive in headfirst into React. That means we have a couple links set up. That means we've got some styling ported over. Basically, the check-in on Thursday, you're going to have a couple of minutes to present what you have in your HTML. And then a couple minutes to show what you have moved over to in your React. So like I said, the entire React app does not need to be converted over yet, but we want to see some progress since the last check-in. Does anyone have any questions about the capstone check-in coming up on Thursday? Okay. Does anyone have questions about the homework assignment from over the weekend? I have not caught up on grading any of them, but were there any questions where you felt particularly stuck that you feel like we could go over in class that might be helpful? Any questions that made you cry so hard you are now worried about your laptop and whether water damage is insured? It's not. Yes. So Amber had a question about, let me pull up that specific question. So there was a question related to props, and we covered that in the chat application, but we did not use it in blog, which is why it was probably a little challenging. and the system just rebooted, I swear to God, if that projector turns off, I may just get up and leave.
I know it's wrong, but this is why. And it gives me
All right. So the question was, add a prop to page 2 in app.js, copy and paste app.js here, make whatever prop that you added in app.js show up in page 2, copy and paste page 2 here. Okay, so let's, you do not need to follow me here. I am just going to set this up quickly. So we've got an area to work in, npx create React app, and I'm going to call it playground. Shame, Shay, shame. Said he forgot that we had homework over the weekend. While this may have been a particularly challenging homework, hopefully this exposed concepts that you know and that you're really getting, and concepts that you're really not getting, right? That was the whole point of the homework. It was less about, oh, I need something to give you a grade, more about saying, hey, each one of these questions is covering a different React concept, hopefully giving you guys a little practice on them. Okay, oh, thought we were done. Fake out. Okay. So I grab my playground, I open that in my VS Code. The world hates me today. Here we go. I do my npm start. I go to my app.js. I clear everything out here. Okay, 2 ways of creating components. One, we can either add the component right into this file. So we can say child component equals a function. That function is going to return something like a div. And then we can call that child component right in our app.js. That means if we throw an h1 down here that says child, when we look over in app.js, we see our child right here. We can also create that child in a new file if we wanted to. So we normally name our file name and the name of the component the same thing, although it is not a requirement. We can take that child component, throw it in over here, export our default child component so that we can switch over to our app.js, and then we can import our child component from the child component.js that we just created here. We get that child going on here. Now, we have parent-children relationship. This is the parent because it's the top component, and the top component is calling the child component right inside of it. What props are a way to send the information from the parent down into the child. So they look just like HTML attributes. So let's call it my prop. And in my prop, we can send something down like the word cat. In the child component, we have to tell it, hey, you are getting some props. In order to make that prop show up, you can call your props.myprop. And as long as this lines up with whatever you call it right here, you can see the word cat show up. There's one other syntax that you can use for props. Instead of putting the word props up here, you can do something called object destructuring. So if you put in curly braces, you can tell it my prop right here, and then use that prop directly in here. And that also makes cat show up. So 2 different ways of doing it. If you put in the curly braces, whatever you put inside the curly braces lines up with whatever the prop name is here. If you don't put in curly braces, you can call it props, and then you need to use that object syntax, dot notation syntax here. There are two schools of thought on this. There are some people that like using the word props there because it's very clear that whenever you access a property, it is coming in through the props. There are other people who don't like that and say, I would rather just define all of the props that my child component is going to get, and then I can just name them directly. I don't think that there is an industry standard there. I have seen it enough both ways that I think it's important to teach both and understand it, but both clearly work the exact same way. Does that answer your question? Do you know why we need props? Yeah, so for example, if we had something like state with our animals and our set animals, and we decide that our animals are a dog, cat, and elephant, and we want to make the child component show up for each animal. What we can do is our animals.map, which gets us access to each individual animal, which is going to return the child component with a my prop of whatever animal we are getting from this loop. And because we do that, we can now see, if we remember to import our use state, that we get our dog, our cat, and our elephant along with the word child 3 times because we've got our H1 child right here. Jen.
Do we not have like unlimited attempts on the quiz? I clicked out of it to open up the Zoom chat today and now I can't get back into it. I only had it like half done.
It shouldn't have had a time restriction on it. Let me just double check that, but no, you should be able to get back in it. Do you have like an error message or?
No, like I submitted it and now there's no way to like, there's no button to
Oh, here.
attempt again. Ah, cool beans, thank you.
Yep. Sorry about that. Plush.
I have a question about like when we import something. There's like times we add that in curly braces and there's when we don't. Is it because when we're exporting default, we don't need to use curly braces?
That is exactly it. Yeah. So in this child component, we're exporting the default. Because it is a default export here, we do not need the curly braces here. However, if we're in this file and we make something like a second component equal, each one that says second, now we can't come down here and say export default second component. It's going to yell at us and it's going to say only one default is allowed per module. Well, we can pretty easily fix that by taking out the word default. Now it's like, what are we exporting second component? I don't quite understand that. What we do instead is we put the export keyword up when we declare the variable. When we export a second thing from second component, we can't just call second component here, because then it would be looking for 2 default exports, and that's not how it works. So instead, because it is not a default export, we put that in the curly braces. Now that that's in curly braces, we can call our second component, and it will show up just like our other component. Child, second.
What about when we call like create browser router and router provider? That's when we put both of them in that
Whenever you are bringing in multiple things that are not the default exports out of a module, you will put them in a curly brace. So you'll notice that in React, if we wanted use state, we can pull in, or use effect, we can pull that in. That's because these are not default exports. Now you may say, well, then how are we supposed to know what goes in curlies and what doesn't go in curlies? The general rule of thumb is if you're importing something from the same package, it goes in curlies, but the React or the documentation of whatever package you're using will always tell you that. So if it's a component you defined, if it is a default export, it doesn't go in curlies. If it is a regular export, it always goes in curlies. For a package, if we go to something like useState, you'll see in the documentation, they will tell you how to do that import using the curlies.
Got it. Thank you.
And if you think about it, the default export is usually the thing that is the most broad. And then if you need something more specific from the package, you use the curlies to pull it in. That will make a little bit more sense when we get into Node, because in Node, we'll be able to use the same import-export system. React is certainly the first time that we see it, though.
Will we get a chance to like see how we use API data with React? I know you showed a little bit of it on Tuesday last week, how it's gonna work, but I'm not sure like about where we're gonna call the async await, and I don't know, like.
Yep, we are going to do an example tonight on how all of that works. We're gonna use the Star Wars API to pull in all of the characters or starships or something from the Star Wars world. Then we are going to see how we can filter that information down. And then we're going to see how we make it so if we click on that character, we get more information about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Jen, you said you got stuck on number 10. I love when you guys send me a Slack message and you're like, I'm stuck on number 10, as if I have the quiz memorized of what question number 10 is.
Stop playing, you know you do.
It says use the style prop, not the CSS file, to change the font size of the input to 18. Okay, so whenever we hear prop, we just think like HTML attribute, right? Put it right on the equal. So what we mean there is when we go to this H1, we can put a style on it. And now in HTML, we would just say something like font size is 18, right? But in React, we can't do it as a string. Instead, React takes it as an object. And the reason why it does that is it gives us variable control over that. So here we can say our font size, we camel case instead of dashes and say 18. And we should now see that my child is now smaller. The reason why we do it is this curly brace is actually saying this is an object. So we can kind of do something cool here where we could say something like color and set color is equal to useState and I don't know, started out as red. Then because this is inside our curly braces, we're in HTML mode, right? Or I'm sorry, we're in JavaScript mode. We're not in HTML. So I can actually set this to the word color and see after I import my useState, I can see, oh, come on. My color turned red, but because we have tied this to something in state, I could actually throw a button down here that says change color. And then we could say something like on click. And we have two options for our on click. We can either throw a function right in line, and that is exactly what it is called, an inline function, and set it to a new color. And now when I hit change color, it will change that to blue. And we can even keep track of multiple ones. Or we can take this entire function and say something like change color func and paste this up here and say, hey, my const change color func is equal to this function. So this is just calling it, it's no longer an anonymous function. This is now called a named function or a basically the opposite of an inline function. So we sometimes have giant things of our on click that we don't want cluttering up our code down here. So we can move that up. And now if we refresh, it will work the exact same way and allow us to change the color. So that's exactly why we call it as an object instead of a string, so that we can have the power of JavaScript and call information from the state. Jen, it should have worked in an H1. Do you want to share your screen, and then Kenny, I'll come to you next.
I tried it a million times and it wouldn't, like, I even Googled it and I was like, oh, look, this is how you do it. And I had this whole thing here and I put it in the div and it wasn't letting me do it until I just put it in the H1.
Oh, you know what? Because so H1s have their own style associated with them. So if you put it in like a P tag instead, and then took this and applied it, I think it would have worked.
Oh no, like it worked with H1. It just wouldn't work before I put it in the H1. I had hello just in the div.
So this
I
will
tried
work.
to style the div.
That will work. It's just because the H1 has some style associated with it, right? So like what makes an H1 different from an H2?
Oh, because they're
it's bigger.
Ah,
So it will work if whatever element you have inside of it, like if you had a span tag or a P tag, it would apply the size to it. But because the H1 has a style associated with it directly, you have to style it directly on that H1.
why wouldn't it work when I didn't have anything? I just had the hello world in the div. Like I shit you not, I tried it like a million times, a million different ways. And I know I tried it that way too. And it wasn't.
It appears to be working.
Yeah. It's only because it doesn't like me. Okay, thank
Well,
you.
you got the right answer, and hopefully now you know why it wasn't applying to the H1, only because the H1 has styling associated with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And it would have done the same exact thing if you did that in your CSS. If you targeted the div that the H1 was in, it wouldn't have changed size. But if you change your selector to H1, it would have worked.
Makes sense.
Cool. Kenny, you're up. You want to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm gonna share right now. Can you see it?
Yep.
Like the first time I did it, I mean, it worked fine, everything, I guess, but then for some reason I just haven't been having errors. So I went through, step by step, and I couldn't really find what's wrong with it. So everything's compiled successfully, but then when I look at my browser, it says a unexpected application error or something.
Okay. Can you drag your browser window over so I can see the error? Okay, so you have a 404 not found. So let me request remote. And this is really good for everyone to see this, because these are like really common errors that you guys are going to run into at some point in your career. This page 2 down here is saying always make that H2, that page 2 show up no matter what route we're on. We don't want that. So I'm going to comment that out. Now about that 404. Well, if we go, your path you have set to page 1. So if I go to page 1, you'll notice my 404 goes away. And if I go to page 2, our page 2 loads and doesn't have any issues. The problem is we don't have a home page, so that when we just go to localhost without anything after the slash, we get our 404. So to fix that, we can say, hey, page 1 should be my home page. Now, when I come over here and refresh, my page 1 works with no error. And when I go to page 2, that also should work.
Yeah, that makes sense then.
So yeah, whenever we set up our router, I guess hypothetically there would be times that we don't want a home page, but 99.9% of the time we're always going to want a path with our empty slash. Now, whatever component you link it to is up to you. Some people may not link that to a component called home. Some people may link that to their login page. That's fine, right? It doesn't matter what component it's linked to. You just want to have something there because otherwise you're going to get your 404.
Okay, so the slash always has to be there, but our homepage, I guess, if you want to call it.
Yes, if you want a home page, the empty slash has to be there. Yes.
That was good. I was losing my mind the other day. I was like, yeah, I know the code is right, but it's not like I don't understand what's going
Yep.
wrong. All right, appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Jen, are you re-raising your hand?
I figured out what I did and why it wasn't working for me. In the question 10, it says change the font size of the input to 8.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't figure out how to get it on the input.
Okay, share screen. Let's go back through it. Palash, it is not a requirement to have children of a parent route unless you want to set up the outlet where you kind of have a page structure that makes those components show up on every page and then have a section of it change. So if you have like a nav bar that you want on every single page, you're going to set that up with an outlet and have children components. But if every page is truly unique, you won't have any children components. You'll just have a bunch of different paths. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, let me re-request remote here.
Meow.
Okay, so for your input, 2 different ways of doing it. One, we can just take our style and throw it down on the input itself. And now when I type, it will type bigger. And just to prove that that's working, let's go ginormous. So that works. Or we can use your class name here and go to your page1.css and target the input text and make that a font size of, and we'll say 36.
Oh, you didn't want it in the CSS, so I think that's why I got stuck with the.
Oh, okay. On that one, then it was just throwing the style on it down there.
See, I put it above the class name. Is that, did I do something wrong? Because like, I know it wasn't working.
Nope. That should also work.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And it should even work if you take it and put it all the way up here on the div.
But then it makes all of it.
So the right answer was to put it anywhere on the props of the
Oh.
image. Other questions about the homework?
So I thought like whenever you declare a CSS property, like in line, you have to put the property value like in quotes, like 36
You
px.
do not if it is a number. React will assume that the number that you're using is a pixel value. And so because it is just an object, we can use numbers in the object without having to use a string. So it is slightly preferred in React code if you're using a pixel unit to not put it in quotes and not put the px. But if you're trying to do something like width 100%, that would require the quotes. If you're using VH, VW, if you're using REM units, anything like that, then you just put it in quotes and that's totally fine. Any other questions? Okay, so the goal of this week is I'm going to do a bunch of kind of mini projects at the beginning, the first half of class, and then the second half of class will be kind of open office hours. So I'm going to encourage everyone share their screen with the rest of the class so they can kind of learn as you're going. But if you really would prefer to go in a breakout room to ask your question, that is totally fine. Doug is also here, and trust me, is just as qualified on React as I probably am. So if you would like to go in a breakout room with Doug, that is also totally fine. Just shoot Doug a message, shoot me a message, and I can put you in a breakout room with either me or Doug, or you can ask the question in front of the class and have someone learn from what you are doing in your capstones. With all of that said, we did a 10-minute example of how we can make a filter work with a React project, and 10 minutes is certainly not enough time to explain that. So we are going to make a little React project today that is going to practice pulling data from an API, making that data show up, making it so that we can type in an input and have it filter through that data, and then also making it so that when we click on one of those items, it routes us to a page that has all of that information on it. So more React practice. I promise that at 7, we will pause this. We'll pick it up tomorrow wherever we leave off, and we will leave the second half of class open to questions. With all of that said, think about what you want to recover in the next couple days. We can do it ad hoc. You can ask it at the beginning of class. You can shoot me a Slack message and be like, hey, I'm still really not getting use effect, or I don't know why we have to do state, or I'm trying to move this over my capstone and my CSS hates me, or anything like that. So this is your week to catch up on quizzes, to catch up on homework assignments, and to feel really good about the capstone check-in going into Thursday. So anything pops up, any concepts that you're struggling with, let me know at the beginning of class or shoot me a Slack message, and we will come up with a project to recover that topic. With all of that said, I'm going to be going at a moderate speed tonight. So if you would like to follow along, you totally can. If you would like to just kind of coast and let it all soak in, that is also totally fine. I'm going to start with a new React project. So I'm going to CD space in my terminal. I am going to create my week 16. I'm going to create my day 1. You're not sharing. I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you, Doug. I'm going to CD into that. Remember, CD space, and then I am going to npx create my React app, and we are going to call this Swappy, stands for the Star Wars API. While that is going, I am going to pull up the Swappy documentation, and you can see they've got a nice little trial interface here, right? So if I say people 1, it gives me Luke Skywalker. But if I take this out and say, just give me all the people, and I don't specify a number, maybe not. Let me go to, oh, just took a minute. Now, when I come down here, you can see there are 82 people in the Star Wars universe, and it will give me Luke, and it will give me C3PO, and it will give me R2D2. So we're going to build a little React interface around this that lists everyone out, and then make it so that when we click on one of those people, we know we can show more information about that person. Character, I should say. Okay, I am going to close out of my terminal. I'm going to head to my Swappy and drop that in VS Code. I'm going to start a live share and put that in chat. I am going to head to my SRC, to my app.js, delete out my header. I'm going to go to my app.css, clear everything out in there, and delete my logo. I'm going to throw an H1 in here that says Swappy. Going to right click on my app.js, open an integrated terminal, npm start, and hopefully get my Swappy showing up, and I am good to go. You guys have a minute to join the live share if you want, or get set up if you want. And let me make sure my live share is not hijacking your version. There we go. Should fix that.
Max, you're gonna add this to GitHub, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want it to show up as an example project, if you decide, yeah, this isn't really anything special, you don't have to. It's just up to you to show off, you know, what you've learned in example code. Okay. So kind of two trains of thought here. One is when I'm setting up my project, I want to just install everything that I need, and then I'll be done and over with it, right? The other train of thought is, well, let me build it, and as I go, I can add things into it. Can kind of go either way. I'm going to do it as build as we go, just so you can see kind of as you're going on your capstone, you may hit a requirement, realize that you have to install something. So first things first, I want to get all of these people to show up on my page. I want all of these names to show up. So because of that, I have some data, and that data is going to update based off of a user interaction, right? Loading the page. Because of that, I need state. Whenever I'm going to show static information that does not change, I can just throw that in as a regular variable or right into my HTML. But because this data is going to get loaded and updated, I know that I need that in state. So I'm going to say const characters and set characters is equal to my use state. And then I need to load up those characters. So whenever we want something to happen on page load, we're going to put that in a use effect. And our use effect is only going to run when the page first loads. Forgetting those empty brackets are going to cause you a world of trouble. Always, always, always put in at least the empty brackets. Sometimes we put stuff inside of it. Right now, we're just going for those empty brackets. Now, what do we want to do? Well, we want to say const make API call. That is going to be an async function because we need the keyword await, and then we need to call that function. Inside that function, I'm going to say the response is going to come from awaiting a fetch. And where am I going to fetch? I'm going to fetch all of the people from my API. Having flashbacks to Ryan. Hopefully this isn't. Oh, thank you, Flash, for putting that link in there. Now, before I even come out of my browser, I've got an error down here. Well, I forgot to import my use state and my use effect from React. Probably one of the most common things you'll import in any React component. All right, now what do I do with my response? Well, I'm going to look over here, and this sure looks like JSON to me. So to parse it, we're going to say, hey, our data is going to come from awaiting our response.json. And finally, I can console log my data. I save, I come over, I look in my React app. I only put it out in the console. Because of that, I need to go to my console over here. And when I pull that up, I get an object. And inside that object, I get a count, a next, a previous, and 10 results. And here are 10 of my characters. Pausing for a second. I really want to know how they got the characters mass. Like, who wrote Star Wars and went, oh, Darth Vader is 136, I guess, kilograms? All right, take a second, review this code. Do we have any questions so far? That's fine. As we put code in it, it should space it out. Kenny, you were on the right track. Kenny said, if we use dot notation, how can we access the results? Yep, so we're gonna use dot notation. So we're gonna say data, and what's my data inside of? It's inside of my results. So if I say data dot results, I'm gonna get what I want out of that. / in a website is like dot notation to narrow down info. It can be. Originally, the / was meant to say go into this folder, then go into this folder, then go into this folder, and then get the file that's inside 3 folders deep. But as the internet started using more databases, it wasn't about what file we wanted to get. It was about, well, what ID or what name of the information in the database do we want to get? So we kind of hijacked that file path and made it so that we could put parameters inside that URL, either by using query parameters or question mark or equals or key equals whatever, or by hijacking what we call our routing parameters, where the IDs and the dynamic data is between 2 slashes. And we're going to see that a little bit later tonight. Okay, so we got our data.results, but we want to show these results to the end user. In order to do that, where do we want to stick those results? Into the state. Return is next gen. We can't return the characters until we've taken those results and put it into the characters. So I'm going to say set my character to my data dot results. Now we know data dot results is an array. How do we know it's an array? Because it's 0, 1, 2, 3 indexed. It is not indexed by a key. Because of that, what we want to do is say, hey, go get my characters and map over each one of them. That is going to give me each individual character. Just for the sake of naming things a little differently, I'm just going to call it char for now. Now, what do we want to show up for each character? Well, I would like a list item to show up. And because we're using a list item, we should put them in an unordered list. And we need to put a key on each item that gets returned from a map in order to make React happy. So because the character's name is unique, I'm going to use that as the key. Then what would I like to show up in that bullet point? I would like the character's name to show up. I save, I refresh, I come over here, and I get my characters. Pause, review, no dumb questions tonight. Maybe by Thursday, I will not have the same state of mind, but for now, no dumb questions. So if you have a question about how this is flowing, what's happening here, why we did it this way, if anyone wants the football drawing on the screen, whatever is going to help you understand it, now is the time. Last week of React, before we turn up the heat, add about 9 more windows and dive back into the database and full stack.
Yeah, draw the play for me, coach. Just want to make sure I'm following this correctly.
Sure. Okay, so we start. Actually, let me just test something quickly. Yeah, okay. one more thing, and then I will do the drawing. So I just came over here and I refresh the screen and everything breaks. So I come over here and it says cannot read properties of undefined reading map. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? So I'm looking at my app.js line 19. So I come over to my line 19 and here is my .map and it's saying characters is undefined. Well, no, characters is defined right here. Well, what value does my character start out as? It starts out as an empty, nothing. There's not an array in there. So it's trying to map over an array, but there's no array for it to loop over. So we've got two ways of fixing this. We could say, hey, just throw an empty array in there until the API call is done running, until that data is coming back. Just loop over an empty array. In other words, make this UL show up with no LIs inside of it. If we save our code and look over here, when we refresh, we get nothing, and we wait and we wait and we wait, and then the names finally show up. But that's not the best user interface, right? Because if someone loaded this page, they're going to be like, it's broken. So what we can do instead is take this empty array out and come above our return and say, if there aren't any characters, if characters have not loaded into an array yet, return out an H1 that says loading. I save, I come over here, now I get my loading, and as soon as that data comes back from the API, I get my LIs showing up. Okay, so let's flow through how this is working. React does not run in the order that we think it will. So we start at the very top. It goes, all right, uState is coming in from React up here. That's fine. We get two things from uState. We always get two things from uState. Characters, which is going to keep track of the actual data, whether it's an array or a string or an object, whatever it is. And we also get set characters out from our uState so that we can update the state. State is technically immutable. We cannot change the state unless we use this set function here. So it comes down and it goes, all right, we want to use effect. When would you like this to effectively run? When the component first mounts. That's what those empty array brackets are saying. So there, we just wait. We don't do anything there yet. Then we come down here and we hit this if statement. And it goes, if there are not characters, where are our characters coming from? They're coming from our state. What did our state start out as? It started out as empty, an empty parameter. There's nothing in there. So it's going to start out as null or undefined. It's just not there. So we return this H1. Because we hit this return, it is a full stop. We don't do any of this code down here. React's like, I'm done. I made something show up. Well, because it showed up for the first time, this use effect now comes in right here. And it goes, okay, I know how to make an API call. I'm not going to do it until you tell me to do it, though. Well, I'm telling you to do it right here. Because of that, go make this API call. Okay, now this is going to run in the background. It's going to go get the people, and we're going to wait for that response to come back. When that response comes back, take that response right here, parse the JSON, wait for that parse to be done, throw that into data. Okay, once we get that data, we're going to take that data, use dot notation because data is an object, and get the results out of it. Once we get the results, we're going to send those results into our set characters. Well, what does our set characters do? That comes up here and updates whatever data we're taking from the results here and sends it into the characters up here. Well, what do we know about state? Whenever we call set, it's going to come down here. It's going to ignore everything in this use effect, and it's going to say if there are not characters. Wait a second, we now know that our characters are set to their data results. So we are going to bypass this if statement. This is not going to run. That means we're going to come down and use this return, and this return is saying characters. Well, those characters are getting sent in from our set, which is coming from our data results. Because of that, we're going to go through each one of the characters, loop over them, get access to them in the char, however you pronounce that. And what do we want to show up for each one of them? We want an LI to show up with the character's name. That character's name is coming in from our state.
Break. I got it.
Cool. Hopefully that helps someone else as well. Any other questions or questions about that?
So did you put the I'm assuming you put the key there so like you can, I guess, identify each thing in the list, so if you was to delete something, it wouldn't mess up the list, or
Yes. So
Sound like-
React uses this key to determine what items in state have updated and whether or not it needs to re-render it or not. So if we come in here and hypothetically change Darth Vader to just Vader, well, what it would do is it would look at all of these other bullet points and say none of that data changed. So because of that, it's going to find the key that did change and only re-render that specific LI, which is why React is so efficient, is because of the virtual DOM that it supports. So because of that, React needs a little help keeping track of what LI has been changed in the state. And so key we add whenever we use a map function. Doesn't matter if it's an LI or a div or a p tag or whatever it is. We always add key whenever we are mapping over something, and the key should always be unique. 9 times out of 10, we'll have that information from a database and can just use the ID from the database. However, sometimes we won't, and we'll have to find another unique thing, like a timestamp or a name or something like that, that would be unique. Shaquota.
Yes, I have a question, like, why are we using, like, do we have to use the await, where you have like await fetch, await response?
We don't, but if we don't use await, we have to use promises.
Okay.
So the other way of writing this, and if this makes your eyes bleed, I totally understand. I'm not a huge promise fan myself, but what we can do is we can say, go fetch the people, then go get the response and return the response.json. And then once you have the JSON, you're going to get the data. And once you have the data, set the characters to the data dot results. And if we come over here and refresh, that will work, hopefully, the exact same way. So if this syntax makes more sense to you, totally fine to use this. This is the newer syntax with async await and is preferred in the industry. But if this doesn't click with you and this makes more sense, that is totally fine. You can use that instead.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Oh, Plosh, did you have a question?
I did. So like on your line 24th, when that if statement is executed and it returns loading, how does it go back? I know like use effect like constantly updates it, but had this been like vanilla JavaScript, will it still go back in the absence of use effect, or will it just skip everything and
Use effect is a React specific concept, so we can't really compare it to vanilla JavaScript. What we are basically doing is the use effect, again, hooking into React functionality, but by putting the empty parentheses here, we're telling it, don't run this code until something renders for the first time, until something returns out. So what we are effectively doing is saying, skip over all of this code until one of these returns happens. Once any return happens, go do the code inside of here. And once you're done with the code inside of here, we're calling this set. Anytime we call set, it is automatically going to go rerun this entire function, skip over the use effect, and only return whatever return is applicable. So whenever we update state, we are triggering a return, but we don't trigger the update state until we render something out using the use effect.
Understood. But in the absence of in vanilla JavaScript, like where there's no use effect, we would have done we would have carried out the fetch statement. And had it been followed by that if statement, would it like skip the rest of it?
Well, it's tricky because you're not only doing the use effect, you're also calling an update in the state, and the update in state is what's causing it to rerun the returns and return out the proper information. So what we would have to do instead in vanilla JavaScript is something like we would have to say something like const results div is document get element by ID results. In the results div, set the inner HTML to something like loading. Then go do our entire fetch.
Gotcha. Yeah, that explains it. Yeah, like
Then once we get our results, we would go back to our results div and set the inner HTML of that to like our data
characters and results. Yeah.
dot map, and then go map everything.
Awesome. Thank you.
Data dot results. And then technically we would have to like join all of these together as a string, and that's how we could do it in vanilla. Oh. No, this would work. This would work. A little hacky, but it would get the job done. And we wouldn't need the key because that's the React concept. Okay. Any other questions? Clone Wars is the best Star Wars, by the way. Hands down. You'll lose points on your grade if you disagree.
Well,
Excuse me? Like, I say,
minus my
excuse
points.
me? Like, what? Excuse me?
Okay, we good to keep going here?
Yeah, Rogue One was the best Star Wars in the last few years. Just saying. Just leave it at that.
I am very excited for Ahsoka. All right, so now let's make it so we have a little input here, and we can type in Darth and have it show just Darth Vader. Corwin, good question. Hold that for 1 second. Let's get this working, and then I'll circle back to your question. So I am going to throw an input up at the top here, and we'll throw a label on that of like filter by name. And we should technically say ID is equal to our filter. And then this is a HTML for the filter. That's just going to make it so, well, two things. One, it will make it so if we click on filter by name, it will highlight the text input. Two, there's no way for accessibility screen reader to know that this input and this label are associated together. So for accessibility standards, it's always a good idea on an input, if you've got a label for it, to tie those two together so they know what they are connected to. Okay, now we're going to add, we know that this is data that's going to update, whether that's the user inputting it whether that's data coming from the API, it is something interactive. Whenever we hear interactive data, we should think state. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add in a const filter text and a set filter text. And because we already imported our use state, we do not need to import it again. But inputs like to start out as empty strings. They don't like to be undefined or null. They really like to start out as empty text instead. Now we have to tie that to our input. So what we are going to do is add in two things. One, the value is going to come from our filter text. And two, our on change is going to say filter. Now, how does it know how to filter? It doesn't. So we have to say const filter is going to receive an event. And that event is going to set the filter text to the event target value. Now, believe it or not, it can go wrong at this point. We're going to come over here, type in ABC. If you cannot type anything in, there is a problem. The problem is either your value or your on change are not linked together. So if we do something like, if we call this filter filtry and forget to put it, no, that won't work. We throw an on change, if we forget our on change and come over here, I can't type anything in this input. I'm hitting the keys on my input, it's not working. We can't use value without putting that on change on there. That on change is what is going in, setting filter text. That set filter text is trickling into our filter text. Our filter text is updating the value in here. Okay, now let's make it work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I want to set my characters to my characters, and I'm going to filter my characters. A filter is just a loop that's going to get me access to each individual character, and I want to return any character that includes the event target value that just got typed in. Notice I'm not using filter text. Filter text hasn't been updated in state yet. So we want to use the event target value, as that is the more up-to-date value. Set filter text actually runs asynchronously. And no, unfortunately, we cannot put a weight on it to make it run synchronously. So whenever you're working with a filter, anything with live data, it's generally a good idea to use the event target value instead of relying on a state value. Okay, so I come over here. I'm going to highlight my ABC, and char.includes is not a function. Like, okay, well, why not? Let me console log out my char. So I save, I come over here, I clear my console, I get the same error, but now let's look at what it's trying to do. It's saying if this character includes the letters DAR. Well, we've got all of this data here. And I'm like, well, what am I trying to say it includes? The birth year 19 BBY, the created, the edited, what? Well, I need to specify here includes only works on a string. What string am I trying to filter through? I'm trying to filter through the name. So I'm going to say char.name includes my event target value. Now I come over here, I type in Darth, and I get only Darth Vader. I'm like, all right, give you guys a minute, catch up on that. Any questions there? Corwin, I have not forgotten your question. I promise I will sneak it in right before break. Okay. Kenny, that is the next thing. So we come over here and I delete out my Darth Vader, and I'm like, well, but where do my characters go? Well, maybe I'll just come up here and I'm just gonna throw a console login for my characters. I save, I come over here, I type something in, and let me just refresh. I'm gonna type in DAR and I get Dark Lighter and Darth Vader, and I only have my 2 characters now in state. So if I take that data out, what am I filtering over again? I'm filtering over just those 2 characters. There's no way for me to get back the information, all of my characters, because I just set my characters to the filtered version of that. Oops. Well, I could go make the API call again, but that seems really inefficient. I had all of that data in the first place. I don't want to go remake that API call. So instead, what we do is whenever we filter over data, we leave the original data as is. And instead, what we do is we keep a copy of just the filtered information. So if we want to clear the filter and go back to the original information, we haven't overwritten it like we did right here. So what we do is we say const filter results and set our filter results. And that is going to start as a use state. Then we're going to come down here and said, instead of setting our characters to the filter results, instead we're going to set our filter results to whatever is coming out of the filter. Then we're going to come down to our characters.map, and we're going to say, if there are filter results, use the filter results. Or if there is nothing in the filter results, show all the characters instead. This is where the power of React comes in, because this would be a whole heck of a lot more lines of vanilla JS. So I save, I come over, I'm going to say DAR, and I get my Dark Lighter and my Darth Vader. But now, because we're always filtering on the characters and we're never overwriting the characters, if I take out my text, I get back my original list of characters. And Palash, hopefully that connected back to Tuesday without a fried brain.
Yep, it did. Thank you.
So this is kind of funky syntax down here, but is the beauty of JavaScript. We can say use filter results if there's anything in the filter results, or if there's nothing in the filter results, show the characters list instead. If we take that out, don't follow me, just showing an example. If we only use the filter results don't have anything in them. So after our characters have loaded, the filter results start out as empty. There's nothing in them. So we can't just use the filtered down version of it. We have to say, use the filter results if they exist, or if they don't exist, show all the characters instead. Okay. Now, let's go back and answer Corwin's question. Without the use effect, it won't cycle through the function. Well, it will, but it will get really messy. The reason why we need this use effect is the use effect is saying, hey, go set the characters. Whenever we use set characters, it's going to re-trigger a render. Well, when the render re-triggers, it's going to go make the API call again. And when that data comes back, it's going to go set the data. Well, the set data is going to go back up and realize that it needs to re-render the component and go show that information. So we use the use effect to not only say load this only when the component loads, we also use it to say, hey, if we're setting the state, if something is updating, don't rerun this because we only do it when the component first shows up. So if I take this out of the use effect, look at what happens. It's loading and and it just looks like everything's fine. But if I come in here and I type the letter L, oh, you son of a. Why is that? Oh, it all disappears. Okay, never mind. Let me. Okay, let's try it like this. See our API call? If we refresh the console, what's happening? It's loading, then it got the data and it's loading again, and then it finally shows up. We're like, okay, but it's still running in the background, even though it has showed us all of our data. And whenever I clear that console and type in a letter, because the state updated, it's now going and running the API call again. It's basically because we're updating this state over and over again, whenever the state updates, it's going to go rerun this API call. That's not what we want. So we prevent that loop by putting it in the use effect and saying, look, this should only run one time. After the first return shows up, after the words loading shows up, go do this fetch, update the state, and when that state updates, skip over the use effect. We already ran that code once and only show that one time. Shay asked the question, the filter input capitalization, is that by default? How do we change it? We can change that by saying, take the char name and make it to lowercase, then also take the event target value and make that also lowercase. Now we can do our lowercase lu and still get Luke. We basically make them both case insensitive by making them both all lowercase. There were fancier ways of doing that with like a regular expression, which I would love to get into, but plush.
When I type in the first letter, say L, it shows Luke, but then when I type another letter, it I don't know, breaks down. It's working for you.
Share your screen. It shouldn't be doing that.
Okay. See my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So if say I type in L, it does that, and when I do U, it takes it away. If I do
Let me
two
see your
Z-
code.
Okay.
Let me have a remote. Okay, so the warning you have over here, a component is changing an uncontrolled input to be controlled. This is likely caused by the value changing from undefined to a defined value. Well, why is it starting out as undefined when you have your value set here? It is because your state up here doesn't have these quotes in it. So now, even though it's an empty string, it won't be undefined. And because of that, damn. Oh, LU, capital LU is what will work. So if you just did lowercase l, it's showing you Luke not because of this uppercase L, but because his last name has a lowercase L in it. And so it doesn't have a lowercase u after it, but it does have a lowercase k after it. And so that's why it's working without the case sensitivity. It isn't actually the two letters that's causing the problem. It just is because it's matching on the last part of his name.
Understood. Thank you.
That was a good goose chase. Other questions?
I got like everything showing up, but when I type it in, it's not like changing the name for some reason.
Do you have your filter results or characters down here?
Nope, sure don't.
I must be so annoying. Okay, review this code, go on break, be back at 7:25. And hopefully you guys have questions as you are reviewing. So tomorrow we will be fully virtual and same on Wednesday. On Thursday, I will give you all a chance to come back in person because we only have one sad, lonely student here tonight. So virtual tomorrow, virtual Wednesday. We will give you a chance to be back in person on Thursday so you can proudly show off all of your capstone progress and everything you've accomplished in React. Tomorrow, we will pick back up on the Star Wars API. We will set up a router. We will make it so that you can click on it and get to different links. We'll talk about different ways of showing information, how we can use different components. We'll go over a Bootstrap install. Maybe we will do pagination or pagination depending on how many students have questions for the second half of class. Who knows? Maybe we'll start with questions and then go to Star Wars for the second half of class tomorrow. I don't know. Star Wars is a whole new project. With all of that said, I would like to open the floor to any questions. Doesn't have to be capstone related. It can be capstone related. Believe it or not, I am going to shut up and just let you guys ask any questions. Jen just asked a question and then I'll come to you next. Some of the tests. What test portion would you like to do, Jen?
Probably still overthinking this, but I can't get my clear button to clear the things.
Okay. I'm going to do it in Star Wars just because I've got that up. But same concept. We already have our input here tied to value and filter function, the on change, right? Then we have our filter text and our set filter text up here. Jen, at what point do we update this filter text?
I have no idea.
We do it right here, right? On change, filter, take the event target value and change that to set filter text to whatever was typed into this value. That means we can throw a button down here that says clear. And on click of this button, go do a function. And what do we want to set the filter text to?
This empty string.
That's it.
Like, I know how to do it. I'm having such trouble like typing it in.
Button, on click, set whatever is tied to your value. And then that's it. You want to share your code?
Yeah. I think I'm overthinking it. I don't know. I have the button on there, and then I don't know why I put button primary, probably just, and then I have the const clear text up here.
Yep, so state is immutable. We can't ever change whatever the value is right here. We can't change that. What we can do though is set the value. And what do we want to set it to? We want to set it to empty string.
Are you fucking kidding me? I was like that close.
So ABC, clear, and you're good to go.
Well, I'm glad I was at least that close. I got that far. Thank you.
Taylor, glad the review of routes was helpful. Tomorrow, we will dive back into router and set up not only 2 different routes, but also the whole like structure and outlet thing. So we will review that a little bit tomorrow as well. You do have to switch everything to React before you use a router. There are other frameworks that have the concept of routing in them. But vanilla.js doesn't really use the notion of router. That is specific to React and other more fully featured frameworks. So you cannot start using a router until you get into React. Amberlynn, did you want to share your screen and ask your question? Okay, so let's take it step by step. First things first, I will try to repeat what is said in person. We always want to deal with the errors first, right? Because if we can't see what we're doing, it's like operating blindly, right? So app, login, plant form, plant character, market inspiration, they're all not defined. So when we normally get a not defined, is this the right one? Okay. Am I switching me over? Sorry. Okay. In here, when we look at our app, we're going to go look at whatever line number it is. So 13 there. And let me scoot this over better so I can get back to it. That there. That there. Okay, that's so we're going to go look at 13, and 13 doesn't know where login is. Well, you don't have it imported, and it's as simple as saying import login from login. And now if we go to login, you've got your export default and your function already defined, and it's returning something. So that should fix that one. So we're just going to keep going. Now for plant form, you do have it imported, but you imported it CSS style, which is like take the whole file, just blah it right out there, right? And we're like, no, just don't blurt it out. We want you to import the very specific plant form from that file. And that way we're kind of giving it a variable to put that import into. So we're just going to repeat that with plant calendar. Oh, autocomplete is getting aggressive. And market. And inspiration. And now we save. And we are down to you attempted to import app.js, which falls outside of the SRC. App.js is here. How did you break that? Import app, render the app. Node modules, SRC. Index. Does it just want to? It shouldn't. All right, you've got an import app on one of these files that is making it very cranky. So we're going to use a new tool. Hopefully everyone is paying attention. We are going to find some place where it says /app. And this is going to show you all the different files where you're using /app. And we're looking at this and it's like CSS, that's cool. App.test, we haven't even covered testing, so that's fine. Index.js, that is where it's supposed to be importing it. And then on your nav bar, you're importing app.js from the root directory. And we probably don't want app.js there at all. In fact, we don't want any of these. Although it's interesting because you do have them imported properly there using the names. So I will come back to those in 1 second. So I'm going to save that. And oh God. I'm scared. That is going to be something with your router. So, okay, I think the problem is you define your router here, but router is really a two-part thing. So we need to also use our router provider and throw that in here. And then we provide the routes to it. Nope. Router is what you called it, which is fine. And I'm just gonna, I don't think this is the problem, but I'm just gonna comment this out for now. Okay, and one more thing, I think I'm on the right track now. If I comment out your nav bar, damn it, I thought that would work. Oh, we have a different issue. Okay, cannot read properties of undefined reading state. So we are on the home page. The router is in here. That means that we should be routing to login. And our login doesn't use state anywhere. Oh boy.
Hey Max, should it be like in your router provider, should it be like router equals router instead of routes?
Hey, good work, Palash. All right, that is why documentation is important and you should read it. Okay, so we're back to functional. So now we can start layering things back in. So let's put your nav bar in, and now we run into that same error. So we now know it's got to be in that file. We're working, all hell breaks loose. We can always comment that out, keep on working on other pages. But I'm going to go to your nav bar, and your nav bar has links, but it is trying to link to app.js. That is an href anchor tag way of thinking. What we are linking to is not to the file itself up here. What we're linking to is one of these paths in here. So what we really want to do in our nav bar is just link to, do you have a home.js? Okay, we're going to want to move that into its own route. So we can look at that in a second. Here, all we need to do is take out these .js's, because again, what we're aiming for is to line up with whatever the path is here. So if we just take these out and save,
Oh, I have another question. If something you the Google
just like in our just for Bootstrap, we import Google fonts into the public index.html. Okay, so we refresh. Oh, I thought we had it. All right, so I'm gonna get a little fancy. I'm gonna find a place where we find a 2 with an equal. And the login is actually our home route, isn't it? Login is just an empty slash. So we probably want that to be login, right? We don't want your, do we want your login to be your homepage? Yes and no. We're gonna leave it on login for now. And then link to, and then I don't think this can be an empty tag. I think this has to say login in it. And then there's one other issue. Inspiration looks like it's spelled wrong. Market goes to, nope, market with a single, no S. Plant form goes to plant form. Homepage, maybe, I'm just gonna put that to login for now. I know that's not right. There's gotta be one more. We run this. Base name, why is it? Turn div. Links, div. Export default and nav bar. Create browser router, login. Operation. Take it out, it fixes it. Let me just do your home.js. Gonna look very pretty. Throw one more in here with your path of the empty slash at the element of your home. And don't forget the comma. There's still a issue with the router. And if I can't find it in 2 minutes, I'm going to move on to someone else. Element, path. In the nav bar, you can put your, find any place there is a link and a link component. Now login exists and the home exists, so we can put that back. Link to Get ready, Doug. It's coming over to you next. Oh, I got it. You can't use the nav bar here because it is outside of the router. So you can't link to things that are outside the router. So instead, what we have to do is create something like template.js. Then I knew there was a reason I taught outlet, but I couldn't remember what it was. Then we're going to return a div. And inside of that, we're going to put our nav bar up in there. And we're also going to use the outlet from the router. Then we import our nav bar. We end up not using our nav bar here, but we say, hey, all of these routes no matter what the path is, use the element of the template we just created. And I'm going to review this tomorrow for anyone if I'm going too fast. Did I not export? If outlet, export default template. Now in our app, we use the template and we say that the children that are supposed to show up in this template are all of these paths. Boom. Okay. Let's go through that. So why can't we just use the nav bar here? The problem is that when we throw the nav bar in here, we get this really ugly error. And it's like, dear God, what does any of this mean? Well, base name, I'm thinking, all right, what's the base of the URL, like the name that we're trying to go to in the link? What's happening is the nav bar is trying to use all of the paths in the router to figure out where these links go to. But the problem is that our nav bar is sitting outside of the router. So it doesn't know how to link to those things because it's not in the router itself. So the way that we fix that is we say, hey, we're going to make one giant parent route up here. And no matter what route you're on, it's going to go feed into the template. The template is going to make the nav bar show up on every single page. And then it's going to take whatever route matches in the children path here and make that show up inside of this outlet. Now, because the template is holding the nav bar is now inside the router, so it now knows how to make these links work. Hypothetically, that means if we go to inspiration, we get whatever text is on the inspiration page. Did I fry someone's brain other than Amberlynn's on that? That was a close one. You almost had me. Fine. I will go over an example of that tomorrow of, hey, how do we use React to make something that we want to show up on every single page? We'll build that into Star Wars tomorrow if you guys got lost on that one. Flash out a question. He said an example where the second parameter in the use effect is not an empty string. Can definitely do that. So we have times that we want something to happen when something is updated. That is often in state. So what I can do, we already have our use state, our use effect up here with these empty brackets. But what I can do is I can say, hey, I want to make it so something runs whenever my filter text changes. And I can do something in here to say something like, if filter text equals Darth Vader, then alert, welcome to the dark side. Now we can throw a console.log in here that says this use effect is running. Now, whenever this dependency, that's what these things are called inside the array. This entire array is called a dependency array. Whenever one of these dependencies update, and we can theoretically put multiple ones in there, we are going to get this console log to run. So I come over here and I type in Darth, and if I scroll down to the bottom of my console, I can see the use effect is running. Let me clear my console to make that a little bit clearer. Loading. I get my data back, and now I can say Darth, and I get this use effect is running. If I type another letter, I get this use effect is running. Why is the use effect running? Whenever filter text gets updated, it's going to run this. Well, I also put in a conditional in here. So I can now say, if I fully type out Darth Vader, I get welcome to the dark side. So this dependency array, when it is not empty, is saying load the first time the page loads, and whenever that variable in state updates, that's when my use effect is going to run.
Where is it used, like in real life?
In real life, it's used to say, whenever this variable updates, I want you to go run this function instead. So it is basically saying the effect of updating this data is what? The effect of updating filter text is whatever is between these curly braces.
Gotcha. So like what we did with use state, where we went to where we type in, say Luke, say LU, that can be done using use effect too.
Yeah, you could do it like this. You could say, hey, this filter is only going to update the filter text, and then we're going to do all of the work of filtering it and doing it all up here. So filter is now just setting the filter text into state. And then we are bitching about target. I moved you. Event filter. If there is not filter text, just return the function. Okay, so now we're saying, okay, let's type in LU. What's happening is the on change is firing the filter. The filter is setting filter text. And because filter text is part of this dependency array, it is now setting the filter results.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Doug.
How do I do a breakout room?
I will show you on your computer so you know for the future.
Thanks.
No, I have to make you co-host again. There you go. Now you should have access to more breakout rooms. Let participants choose or assign manually, I think, and then 2 is fine. And then you hit create, and then you can assign whoever you want to it. Here, open all rooms, and then you hit join, and you're good to go.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, other questions? And it doesn't even have to be about React. We can go all the way back to HTML. We can go all the way back to vanilla JavaScript. You tell me. You're not getting out of here if we just sit here for 30 minutes without questions. We're not getting out early.
I'm staring contest right now.
What's that, Corwin?
So I'm trying to have a staring contest right now.
Next capstone check-in, Shay, we are looking for a little bit of your capstone moved over to React. So we want to see you have a router set up. We want to see you have at least 2 pages. We want to see that you've got links between the 2 pages. We want to see some styling moved over. We want to see maybe you're thinking a little bit about interactivity. Maybe you're thinking about data sources coming in. You don't have to have a use state set up. You don't have to have use effect set up. But if you're starting to think about them, that's good. It's more about thinking about that question, one of the last questions on the quiz, right? When you move vanilla HTML and JavaScript over to React, what do you have to update? You have to update the style tags. You have to update class to class name. You have to think about your on clicks and how that works a little differently. Maybe you had some vanilla JavaScript that was doing an on click and you have to update that. Maybe you want to start thinking about, hey, I've got this component that I want to reuse, right? I've got 5 different cards that should show up. So instead of just moving that HTML over, I'm going to make a separate component for that and import that and export that. Okay, well, what changes on that component? Maybe I need some props set up there. So you don't need your full project moved over, but we want to start thinking about reusable components a little bit. We want to start thinking about what do we need to update. I'm glad you asked that question. I am going to go to Canvas and post in all 10 different things that are acceptable answers on that quiz. And that may trigger some questions. Okay, well, I've got 9 of them in here. I think there was a 10th, but I can't remember. Jen, I'm happy to work on the quiz if you're stuck somewhere. I just posted in the C5 channel 9 different things that you want to think about when you're moving things over to React. Now, don't panic if you don't have a couple of those and you're like, oh, I don't have any of that done for my capstone check-in. You don't have to do all of these. These are just things to be thinking about as you're moving that code over. Any questions about the list that I just posted in Slack? Shannon, if you think that's bad, I initially was like, name 2 things you need to update in your React code when you're moving it over. Then I'm like, wait, there's another. Wait, there's another. What would have been really cool would be generate 9 different things that you need to update in your React code. I think I only did 2 or 3 out of 9. I think that's totally fair. All right, if no one has questions, I'm not letting you go 30 minutes early. What I am asking you to do instead, go to your desktop, open your My Code folder, and look through existing projects that we have done. Where did you get confused? Where did you get lost? Where did you have a question that you didn't know you had until you looked through it and you had it again? Understanding everything we've done up until this point is crucial because we will not have time between now and the end of the program to go back on any of that. This is your week to catch up. This is your week to make sure that it is all sinking in. This is your week to be able to ask questions. Next week, we start in the database. We learn our final new syntax. SQL is the last new language that we are learning. Then we go into full stack and we quite literally double the number of windows you have to have open on your computer. You got 2 front end and back end. We've got to worry about the database. Then you have to worry about your windows versus my windows. There's a lot to juggle. So use not only the next 30 minutes to get a jump start on your capstone, but use this time between now and tomorrow to generate out some questions that you have. All of these projects are all building on each other. If you fell behind on one of those projects, it's okay. Someone else probably did as well. So use the next 30 minutes to not pray to God that I'm actually letting you out early. Use it to review, generate questions for tomorrow. We will start there tomorrow, and whatever time we use is great, and whatever time we don't use, I'm ramming Star Wars down your throat, and we're just going to keep on adding features until one of you beg for mercy and have a question on your capstone. Till then, have an awesome evening. If you have questions that pop up and you're going to forget them before tomorrow, send them to
I got
me
a
in
question.
Slack and we will dive into it then. Corwin, go ahead. Did you say you had a question?
I was just being an asshole. I'm sorry.
All right. If anything pops up in the next 30 minutes, shoot me a message in Slack and I can jump into a breakout room. Otherwise, have an awesome evening and come to class prepared tomorrow with questions. See you
Wait,
guys.
are we sitting here for 30 minutes?
Nope, you can get out.
Oh, I thought you just said we
I
want to
was
leave.
wondering that too. I was wondering that too.
I was like, we just about to look at each other. All right.